Now, this story takes place in the days of kings and queens and castles, and in a faraway land there lived in a kingdom a farmer and his wife and three girls. The oldest was Gretchen. Gretchen had long brown hair almost all the way down her back to her waist, and she had two younger sisters. Now, the family was very, very poor. They only had two chickens, and each chicken would lay one egg a day, and they had a milk cow who was pretty old and only gave enough milk for the two younger girls each day. Well, they did grow some vegetables and stuff for food, but they were very, very poor. One spring morning, Gretchen was out working in the garden early because she knew that it would get hot during the day and be harder to work. So she was pulling weeds out of the garden, and beside the farm was the road that led to the king's castle. And as she was working, she saw coming along the road towards the castle an old horse pulling a cart with two big wheels, and on the cart sat an old woman in a faded blue dress with kind of a scarf wrapped around her head, and she had gray hair, and she looked like she was almost asleep. And as the cart got close to the farm, Gretchen ran out and stopped the horse, and she said, "Is everything okay? You don't look too good." And the old woman said, "Well, I have an errand at the castle, and we ran out of food 2 days ago. I haven't had any food for 2 days, and my horse hasn't had any food for 3 days. And I'm quite tired." And Gretchen said, "Well, you come right in." And she led the horse into the yard and helped the little old lady down and into the house. And she told her mom that the little old lady should have Gretchen's breakfast. And after that, she should lie down for a nap in Gretchen's bed. So Gretchen went back outside and led the horse to a stream nearby where the horse got a good drink, and then she staked him out in a place where there was lots of nice green grass, and the horse started eating, and it was obvious he hadn't had much food for a long time. Well, when it came time for lunch, the old lady woke up from Gretchen's bed, and Gretchen told her mom to give the old lady her lunch and let her have a nap in her bed that afternoon. So Gretchen went without lunch. And the same thing happened at supper. The old lady was still so hungry and she was so thin that Gretchen told her mother to give the old lady her food, and she would go without until the morning. And the old lady was so tired after supper she went and got in Gretchen's bed. And Gretchen went out and found a big pile of straw in the barn and lay down, and that's where Gretchen slept that night. Well, in the early morning the next day, Gretchen heard some noise, and she got up out of the barn, and it was just getting light, and the old lady was leading the horse in from where it had been tied to eat grass. And Gretchen said, "What are you doing?" And the old lady said, "I've got to be on my way to the castle. I've got an important errand to do." And Gretchen said, "Are you sure?" And the old lady said, "Yes." And so Gretchen helped her hitch up the horse to the old cart, and helped the old lady up into the cart. And the lady said, now before I go, I want to give you something because you went without food all day yesterday and you gave me your bed and you've been so kind to me and so thoughtful. I want to give you a present. And she opened her hand, and in her hand were two small, round, white, perfectly white balls. And they were made out of very, very smooth stone. And she said to Gretchen, I'm going to give you these two stones. If you ever need help with anything, what you do is you grab one of these stones and ask for the help you need and squeeze it very, very tightly, and help will come. And Gretchen thought that was a little unusual, but she said, thank you very, very much. And the little old lady gave her a small little leather sack to put the stones in, and took off down the road to the castle, which was about a day's walk away with her horse and cart. Well, Gretchen took the sack with the two stones and put them under her pillow in her bed and kind of forgot about them. Well, about 2 weeks later, it turned out that her father's brother, who lived in a little town nearby, died. And his wife, the mother, had 3 little kids. And they were very, very poor. And Gretchen's father said, we need to take them into our farm and help them. And Gretchen and her mom and the sisters said, well, we only have 2 chickens and they only lay 1 egg each a day, and we don't have enough milk in our milk cow for us. How are we going to do it? And their dad said, it's going to be all right. We've got to help them out. And so he made plans to go and get his sister-in-law and the 3 little girls to come to the farm. Well, when they arrived, Gretchen's mom said, well, now we're going to give the mom is going to have to sleep with the littlest girl in Gretchen's bed, and the 2 other girls can have Gretchen's sister's beds, and Gretchen and our 2 girls are going to have to sleep out in the barn. And Gretchen suddenly remembered the stones, and she dashed into the house and pulled a little leather sack out from under her pillow. And she got one of the stones out, and she put it in her hand, and she said, well, we have the mother and 3 girls joining us, and we don't have enough food. We don't know how we're going to take care of them. This is a terrible situation. We just don't have enough food. We need some kind of help to take care of them. And she squeezed on one of the stones in her hand, and it got hotter and hotter and hotter. And all of a sudden, she had to let go of it. And when she let go of it, there was a very bright orange flash. And outside, a big commotion started. And she ran outside, and her father was laughing and jumping around 15 big, enormous chickens. And her mother was twirling around 2 enormous, big, brown and white milk cows. And her sisters and the 3 little girls who were her cousins were chasing 4 little pigs all over the yard. Everybody was laughing and carrying on. And Gretchen looked at all that and she said, oh, we're going to have enough food for this family. And so they did. Well, about 2 weeks after that, Gretchen and her sisters were out in the forest collecting firewood for the stove. And all of a sudden, through the forest, they saw a figure coming leading a horse, and the horse was walking on 3 legs. And the figure was a young man, and his face was all cut with scratches and he was dirty, but Gretchen thought he was very, very handsome. And they ran up to him and said, "What happened? What happened?" And he said, "I'm out in the forest looking for somebody, and my horse stepped in a badger hole and fell down. I think he's broken his leg. We're going to have to put him down," which means kill him, because a horse cannot work with 3 legs. And the girl said, "Are you sure?" And the young man said, "Well, I looked at the leg and it doesn't look good. It looks like it's broken." And Gretchen said, "Huh." And she walked away in the forest and reached into the pocket of her apron where she now kept the sack with the last stone. And she reached into the sack, got the stone in her hand, and turned her back so nobody could see what she was doing. And she said, "This poor man, his horse has a broken leg. We need help for this horse. We need help." And she squeezed on the stone. And it got hotter and hotter in her hand. And finally she had to let go. And there was a bright orange flash. And all of a sudden, she heard laughing and carrying on and whinnying. And she turned around and ran back through the forest, and there was the man with his horse was prancing around and whinnying, prancing around on all 4 legs. And the girls, her sisters, were cheering, and the man had a big smile on his face, and he said his leg must not have been broken. All of a sudden, that horse is walking on all 4 legs. I'm so pleased. And I have to go now." And he got on the horse and rode away. Well, 3 days later, Gretchen was out in the garden again, early in the morning. And she looks up, and coming on the road from the castle was the little old lady and her horse and the cart. And the little old lady looked quite different. She had on a very, very nice blue dress, and she had a gold ribbon in her hair. And the horse looked really, it didn't look tired and old anymore. It looked quite young. And the little old lady, as Gretchen got up from the garden, the little old lady drove her horse and cart right into the yard. And she got out off the cart, and Gretchen said, "Well, did everything go all right at the castle?" And the little old lady said, "Yes." She said, "I had to see the prince, because the prince was very, very sad." And Gretchen said, "Oh no, why was the prince sad?" And the little old lady said, "Well, the prince wants to find a princess to marry and live with him in the castle, and he hasn't been able to find anyone." And she said, "You see, I am his fairy godmother, and I've looked after him since he was a tiny, tiny baby. And I was a long, long way away when you first saw me, and I knew I had to get to the castle and help the prince." And she said, "When you gave me your food and you gave me your bed, I knew you had the kind of heart that the prince would be looking for. And then when you used the stones to help your family and use the stones to help the prince's horse." And Gretchen's eyes got big around. She said, "That was the prince?" And The old lady said yes, and all of a sudden, the old lady floated up in the air and she pulled out some dust and sprinkled it over Gretchen and the horse and the cart. And Gretchen looked down and she was wearing beautiful riding boots that came up to her knees and a beautiful, beautiful dress. And she felt up on her head and her hair was all done up and there was a gold headband around her hair. And she looked at the horse, and the horse was a beautiful black filly who turned her head towards Gretchen and gave a little whinny. And the cart was gone, and in its place were two beautiful beds, just the right size for her younger sisters who had been sleeping in the barn. And the fairy godmother was floating in the air, and she said, "Now, you need to get on your horse because the prince is out in the forest looking for somebody to become the princess." And with a blink of an eye, the fairy godmother was gone, disappeared in the air. And Gretchen led the horse into the farmyard and got her dad and told him about the beds. And her dad was amazed at the beautiful clothes she was wearing. And then she got on the horse and rode off into the forest. And she hadn't ridden very far when she saw that very, very handsome man whose horse had a broken leg, and he was riding through the forest, and when they saw each other, they immediately fell in love. And that is the end of the story. Did you like it? What was your favorite part? Can you use your crayons or your words to describe your favorite part? I think that would be a lot of fun. And we will see you the next time.